Episode 2 of Star Trek Discovery Season 3 has come out. That Hope Is You Part 2. No, wait. Far From Home. So let's take a look at it, shall we? There will be spoilers that follow. Straight off the bat, this is a heavily character-focused episode centred on the rest of the crew. It spares many of the revelations that Burnham was exposed to on her arrival a year earlier, sparing us a reiteration of lore the audience already knows. What was presented were the elements of this universe that we were already aware of, such as the shortage of dilithium, the reliance on couriers, and the fractured nature of Starfleet to the point where the Federation is all but non-existent. Honestly though, I did like this episode, but as opposed to the opener, where I went in full of questions and had many of them answered, Part 2 does little to advance the plot or lore, and as a result feels comparatively underwhelming. With the benefit of hindsight, maybe they should have spread the world building over both of these introductory episodes, rather than front-loading the series with a ton of exposition, as welcome as it was. Many of the characters that were properly introduced in Season 2 get things to do here, a couple fall by the wayside, but it does a far better job of building the team dynamic in one establishing episode. Watching the crew all scrambling about to get the ship airborne again as quickly as possible did create the impression of unity, and Saru continues to develop as a leader. If he doesn't make captain, I'm gonna riot. Very quietly in my room so as not to disturb my neighbours, but there will be a lot of tutting. Georgiou, however, proves to be a wild card, answerable to no one in her eyes, but now without wartime Starfleet or Section 31 to back up her authority. She puts on a brave, psychotic face, but her power over the crew is severely limited now that Discovery is effectively isolated, its crew of 88 having to rely on one another, while her attitude pushes her to the outside. Burnham is her only tether to Discovery, and we'll have to see if that will be enough to keep her cooperative, because without a doubt, she's right when she observes how easy it would be for her to set herself up in this fractured future. The crew of Discovery face a similar choice now as did the crew of Voyager when they found themselves stranded in the Delta Quadrant, although now it's centuries being the dividing line, not light years. The question is, do they hold firm to their Starfleet values in a world where arguably it doesn't matter and could even be a liability, or give in to the Georgiou approach, which may allow them a greater chance at surviving, but at a cost? Although I think letting Zara free may come back to bite them in the arse. I didn't get more than a villain of the week vibe from him, but he is still alive. I just don't really feel compelled to see him again. Now, Kyla Detmer is being teed up for something. At first we assume it's a case of concussion discombobulating her, but that gets cleared up by medical soon enough and she remains visibly shaken. I'm guessing that it's the trauma from everything that Discovery has endured, from the control issue to being dumped onto a planet, to being consumed by ice. It's been non-stop for a couple of days. On top of this, it's only a matter of time before they realise just what they've been forced to leave behind. Everything. And I wonder if that is what's dawning on her. There was an odd subtitle in the Netflix version that had the Doctor talking to her apparently telepathically, but the medical officer's mouth was moving and it sounded more muffled than psychic, so I wonder if this is a mis-subtitling, as has happened before with the Netflix versions. Let me know if you saw an alternate. As of right now, I'm writing this bit off as an error. Speaking of sickbay, it was warming to see Culber once again, and the introduction shot of Stamets in awakening from his coma was creatively done, the isolation of his self being suddenly washed in a flurry of activity. There was a lot of that in this episode too, playing with sound and the camera work, and it worked for me as opposed to it being distracting, like last episode. And I do like me a good starship crash. The Stamets-Reno scenes were fun with their sparring dialogue, although some of the references or barbs did pass me by, not gonna lie, and the fact that the two responsible for keeping the ship in working order are themselves hanging by a thread is reflective of the rough time the crew has been having. We have Stamets putting on a brave face and trying to ignore his injuries, clashing with Reno's sarcastic levity she uses for both defence and to goad him into taking rational action. But they're as stubborn as each other, so naturally neither back down. Ultimately, their sacrifice is worth it, repairing the EPS damage that was interrupting the grid and getting the ship into the air just in time to be rescued by whatever vessel Burnham now finds herself aboard. Which does raise a valid point that the crew could have chosen to sit on their hands the whole episode and they'd have been rescued anyway, although now at least they have allies with the Corridans. Tilly is brought along and is as endearing as normal, but is basically more Sylvia Tilly. She does show some courage in facing the unknown hostile situations Saru and she encounter, and I look forward to seeing her character grow further, as I feel it's about time that she begins to forge her own path. I'm ready to see her be more than just the injected comedic tone. By all means, keep those charming qualities, they're a part of her, but I would like this to develop more confidence in her and her abilities. Here's hoping this series provides. The Corridan mining colony that we see is frustratingly not given a location, but fine. The Corridanites were encountered by Starfleet in 2151 by the Enterprise NX-01, and it was good to see a recurring species. The planet itself plays host to a type of environmental hazard that they term parasitic ice, which suggests it's alive in some limited fashion. This makes me wonder then if the elevated chunks of rock are deliberate, a way for colonists to avoid walking on the dangerous surface, as there was a lot of buildings grafted to the base of these floating rocks, with only the mining equipment on the ground level. From orbit, it looks like an entire segment of the crust had been blasted into orbit a long while ago too, judging by the growth over the scarred land. We get the emergence of a new language, one that Saru doesn't recognise, which is saying something. So presumably it's one that evolved in the 930 interim called Pidgin, which in reality is a grammatically simplified mashup language devised as a common basis for communication. So I guess this is something similar. However, the term V'Draysh comes up again when referring to Starfleet, the same term that was applied to the organisation when Control had usurped the entire Federation and used it to enact its genocide. At least that future never came to pass. I haven't seen a preview for the next episode, but I imagine it will be getting the Discovery crew back up to speed with this new time, but I do wonder how much progress the Federation has made in its restoration, if any, in the year since Part 1. Overall, though, this episode, with its Wild West town under someone else's heel feel, did little to add to the overall narrative, but may have been set up for things to come, and it was a chance to reintroduce the characters. Enjoyable and slower paced than the opener, but it's what comes after that I'm really interested in, as the crew didn't really have time to come to terms with their situation in this episode. What do you think? I'm certain some are not going to have fully considered what jumping out of their time would entail. Thanks for watching my impressions and review of episode 2, and I'll see you maybe next time for another one, and until then I've been Rick, thanks again, and goodbye.